Hello everybody and welcome back to Farmhouse Lilies. I am so excited to have you here with me today. My name is Brooke and today we are going to be going over starting a small garden and 10 tips plus one bonus tip on starting a small garden. So the first thing that I have on starting a small garden is pick easy plants to grow. These are things like tomatoes, peppers, zucchini, leafy greens, lettuce, maybe some herbs like basil, herbs in the mint family. Don't pick hard to grow plants because then you're just going to get discouraged and that's not going to be good. So pick easy to grow plants that will just really try and grow and thrive in your garden. The second tip I have for you is not to overwater your plants. You want to water the right way. If you shallow water your plants or you water your plants every single day, you aren't going to create a very healthy plant. They're not going to be happy and strong and thriving. So what you need to do is you need to do infrequent deep watering. This is the best way to water your garden because this creates good deep roots. The best way I have heard on how to do this is from a rose gardener actually. He said, water your garden, watch your calendar, and when your plants droop or look thirsty, you've gone a day too far. And that's how you know how often to water your plants. And I really like that advice. It's such good advice. So make sure you're doing infrequent deep watering on your plants. My number 3 tip is to naturally prevent pests and disease through having a healthy plant. And you're going to do this by maintaining soil health, watering correctly, picking the best plants for your area that are disease resistant in the first place. And you're just going to really watch your whole plant and make sure that it stays healthy. If you start to notice any disease, rule of thumb for me is that if I notice the disease is taking about 25% or more of my plant, I'm going to get rid of that plant, or I'm going to heavily prune that plant, depending on what kind of plant it is. If it's like a tomato, I'm just going to pull it out. If it's something like a rose bush, then I'm going to prune really heavily. And at that 25% point, I will either use pesticides or herbicides, usually more herbicides than pesticides. Neem oil is a really good way to combat pests, so definitely keep that in your arsenal. And then make sure, and then there are also other DIY repellents. So that 25% rule is a good way to go and kind of decide what you want to do with your plants, whether you want to just remove that plant or if you want to just use pesticides or herbicides, because I know everyone's threshold for that is different. But please be careful when picking those. Those can be dangerous, so just make sure you're picking things that are right for your family. My number 4 tip is to avoid spacing and overcrowding mistakes. Plants need room to grow. They get really big. So follow the spacing recommendations on the seed packet unless you have grown this plant before and you know how it behaves, or you have decided that you want a food forest vibe and you're just going to plant things close together anyway. When you plant things too close together, it can introduce disease and you can cause other problems as well. So for instance, when I've grown tomatoes too close, they've been hard to weed, hard to prune, and hard to harvest. So that's just something to keep in mind, what plants you're growing, for what purpose you're growing them. Number 5, soil is everything. It is the environment that your plant grows and thrives in. It determines how healthy a plant can be. So there are lots of ways that you can determine your soil health. You can test your soil, and that will help you decide what you need to add to your garden, what you need to take away from your garden. And if you don't want to do this, then the best way to maintain your soil health is to add tons of compost and organic matter to your soil. This, over time, is going to help your plants thrive. So I like to pick organic and stick with organic if you can, because this really promotes the long-term health of your plant rather than like a sugar or caffeine boost that the other fertilizers are going to give. So if you want a longer term healthy plant, you're going to want to use organic, and you're going to really want to use organic anyway to maintain your health. And then if they need a quick sugar boost or caffeine boost, you can use fertilizers. Garden timing and frost dates are my 6th tip. You need to know your hardiness zone, but it's not as important as knowing your first and last frost dates. The first and last frost dates determines when you start and plant your garden and when you should expect plants to die, or even if they can be perennials in your area. So this is a super important date that you should know when you're planting your garden. And your USDA hardiness zone is important to know because you can figure out what can be perennials, what can be grown in your area based on like the level of coldness that your area is in. But for the most part, your first and last frost dates are going to be your most important dates to know. This will also determine how long your growing season is. Because this is super important, because some plants need a long growing season and some places just don't have a long growing season. So that will help you determine what you can plant as well. Some plants handle the cold and heat better than others, so keep that in mind. My number 8 tip is don't forget to mulch. Mulch or weed fabric are great for weed deterrents. They keep moisture in and they help regulate soil temperatures. So this is super important to maintain the health of your plants and to maintain the easiness of the garden. You really want to make sure that you keep those weeds down for the health of your garden, and it keeps using mulch keeps you from having to bend down in the dirt all the time every single day. My number 9 tip for beginners is to start in raised beds or containers. That doesn't take away that an in-ground garden is best. You can do more. There's more soil health. There's more things that you can do in an in-ground garden. However, if you are a beginner, it's easier to start in a container or a raised bed because you can control your soil more. There are less weeds, and there's the benefit of it being located where you want it. So you can put it in the correct sun place, or maybe you can put it in a place where you wouldn't normally have a garden, like a shaded area, because that's what you have. Like if you live in an apartment and you have a shaded balcony, that's what you have. You can put your pots and your other container gardening stuff there, and you can just provide an extra light. Number 10 is to pick a spot with good sun. I know I just said that there are some places with shade. You can add an artificial light to help with that. You can also pick plants that are more used to having shade and actually prefer more shade than they do sun. But if you're going to go with your easy to grow plants like tomatoes and zucchinis and peppers and herbs, you really want to pick a spot with good sun. So we have a garden that gets terrible sun, and every year I am so disappointed that we didn't get a better crop, and it's only because of the amount of sunlight that place gets. So save yourself the hassle and pick yourself a spot with good sun for your garden. My bonus tip is to be patient and to expect imperfection. Gardening is a continual learning process. Not every plant thrives, even under the best circumstances. So just make sure that you are doing your best and don't get disappointed when things don't work out, or you miss a day of weeding, or you miss a month of weeding. Okay? It's okay. Gardens aren't perfect. It's a continual learning process. So I'm so glad that you joined me today for this awesome small garden tips and what I wish I knew when I started my garden. So go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button and leave a comment on what you are starting in your garden this year, or if you are starting a garden for the first time this year. I'm super excited to hear about that. And we will see you in the next video.